Hey guys, so today we're going to be learning about pictographs. So, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve one-step word problems involving addition or subtraction using data represented in a pictograph. Then you should also be able to draw conclusions and make predictions from information that you see on a pictograph. So, here's an example. First, we need to look at the title so we know what we're actually looking at. So we're looking at people's favorite school subject. Then we would need to see, okay, what are our categories? What subjects did they choose from? Well, these students got to choose from reading, math, science, and social studies. Then right here is where they collected their data or their information about which students liked which subject. And then the most important thing you've always got to look at on a graph is the key, because that's where we see that each book represents one student vote. But in the past on Lone Star Learning, we know we've seen it to where the books can equal maybe 5 students, or maybe it can equal 10 students. So that's why it's most important to look at that key, because it's going to change the information on your data. So now let's ask some questions about our pictograph. What is the most popular school subject? You're right, it's math, because it has 6 student votes, and 6 is the biggest number on that pictograph. So now what's the least popular subject? You're right, social studies, because it only got 1 student vote, which means not very many students liked that one. So it was the least popular. So now how many more students prefer math over science? This one's a little tricky. Remember when we see those words, how many more? That tells us we're going to compare these two categories. So we're going to compare math and we're going to compare science. So we can see, oh, these books are all the same. And when we're comparing, we're looking for the difference. So we would have to subtract. So we would do math, which equals 6, minus science, which equals 3. And we can see that 6 minus 3 is going to equal 3. And you can also think of your doubles. You can also look at how these line up and are the same. And then math has 3 extra books left over here. So that's another way that you can solve a comparison problem. So how many students were surveyed? Surveyed means how many students were asked in all. You're right. 14 students in all were surveyed. So now how did the graph change? The title's still the same. The categories are still the same. The data still looks the same. You're right. Each book is actually 2 students now instead of 1. So we would have to count by 2s in order to read our data now. So now how many students prefer science or social studies? That means how many students prefer both of those subjects. So I would say 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 students like science or social studies. Now, how many students were surveyed? You're right, 28, because you would have to count by 2s to figure out your whole. So if you got 28, awesome job. Now, why is it called a pictograph? Well, it's called a pictograph because in our graph, you're going to see pictures to represent the data. Unlike our bar graph from earlier this week, where the bars represented the data, now we have pictures that are going to represent the data. All right, now go ahead and go to your Google Classroom and go to quizzes and complete the pictograph quizzes. I hope this video was helpful. If y'all ever have any questions, feel free to message me.